You think you control everything. Emily Johnson whispered to herself as she stepped into the bright, echoing hallway of the courthouse, her hand pressed protectively over her 7-month belly, the sunlight catching on her gold bracelet and reflecting tiny sparks across the polished marble floors, each step measured, careful, a rhythm that matched the rapid thump of her heart. And for a moment the world seemed to hold its breath, as if sensing the storm about to unfold, the smell of fresh polish and leather filling the air, blending with the faint hum of the fluorescent lights above, and she could hear the distant murmur of people settling into seats, lawyers shuffling papers, the soft click of heels on tile, all building an invisible tension that pressed against her chest. Her lawyer, Olivia Carter, a sharp-eyed woman in her early 40s with sleek brown hair pulled into a professional bun, hovered beside her, whispering details of the upcoming hearing in calm, precise tones. Remember, every step, every word counts, and Emily nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat, feeling the weight of years of hidden struggle, the quiet sacrifices no one had seen, the nights she had stayed up researching, balancing bills, ensuring her prenatal appointments. And even as fear threatened to take hold, she reminded herself she was not just walking into a courtroom. She was stepping into a space where truth could finally surface, where years of manipulation and hidden plans could be challenged with evidence she had fought to preserve. The hallway seemed to stretch endlessly, the walls lined with dark oak and plaques commemorating past decisions, each a silent witness to lives changed. And as she approached the grand double doors at the end, Emily paused, took a slow, deliberate breath, feeling her baby shift gently inside her, a reassuring flutter that steeled her resolve. She could almost hear the faint heartbeat in rhythm with her own, reminding her of what she was fighting for. And the doors swung open with a subtle groan that echoed like a whisper of anticipation through the corridor, her eyes adjusting to the bright chamber beyond, rows of empty benches awaiting the spectators, the judge's bench looming at the far end, imposing, yet distant. And for the first time, Emily allowed herself a flicker of hope that this was her moment, her voice strong even in her own head. I will not be invisible. I will not be silenced. I will fight for what is right. And with that, she stepped forward, each movement deliberate, carrying the weight of her story, the promise of justice, and the knowledge that the tiniest pieces of truth could ignite the greatest revelations, every nerve in her body alert, every breath calculated, as the doors closed softly behind her, marking the threshold between fear and the possibility of triumph. And in that instant, the courtroom itself seemed to lean in, listening, waiting for the story that Emily Johnson was ready to tell. Emily Johnson moved further into the courtroom, her eyes scanning the polished wooden benches, the subtle patterns of sunlight through the tall windows casting a lattice of shadows on the floor, each shadow flickering as people began to settle into their seats, the rustle of papers and the quiet shuffle of shoes against the tile creating a soft, continuous background noise. Olivia Carter staying close, whispering precise instructions in her calm, steady voice. Focus on the evidence, Emily. Every gesture matters. And Emily nodded, feeling the small comfort of her lawyer's presence, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly even as the weight of the moment pressed down upon her. She could hear the faint echo of the judge's gavel from an adjacent room, a sound that seemed to reverberate through the walls, marking the beginning of proceedings that could change everything. And she thought back to the past months, the nights of uncertainty, the moments when she had doubted her own strength, each memory fueling a quiet determination, the careful preparation of documents, the tracking of financial records, the gathering of evidence that had been dismissed or ignored for too long, all converging now into a single, tangible chance to reclaim her life. The bright sheen of polished wood reflecting off the courtroom tables, the muted colors of suits and dresses surrounding her, the subtle aroma of leather and paper mingling in the air, and Emily felt a surge of focus, a clear sense that this was her moment, that the preparation, the patience, and the resilience of countless days were about to be tested. She adjusted the light scarf around her shoulders, smoothing the folds with deliberate motion, her hand resting lightly on her belly as a gentle reminder of why she had endured so much, the soft hum of air conditioning blending with the distant sounds of traffic outside, the the murmurs of attendees, and the occasional click of a pen or a notebook closing, all forming a quiet symphony that framed the intensity of the room. Then Olivia stepped forward to present the first piece of evidence, a clear, meticulously organized binder, each page carefully annotated, the photos, letters, and financial statements arranged in a way that revealed patterns and truths that had been hidden for far too long. Emily followed each movement with measured breaths, keeping her composure even as the subtle tension of anticipation built within her, and she could feel the eyes of the room, not in a threatening way, but as witnesses to the unfolding story, the weight of expectation and curiosity pressing softly against her awareness. The judge entering then, robes flowing, presence commanding yet calm. Emily met his gaze briefly, sensing an unspoken acknowledgement of the seriousness of the proceedings. Then, Olivia spoke, presenting the evidence clearly, her voice resonant, controlled, outlining connections, discrepancies, and facts that had been meticulously gathered. Emily felt a sense of momentum, the pieces of her life, her struggle, and her quiet strength forming a coherent, undeniable narrative, each word from Olivia landing with weight, causing subtle shifts in posture, raised eyebrows, small gestures from those observing. And as Emily absorbed the unfolding scene, she felt a mix of tension, hope, and quiet determination, knowing that each carefully chosen detail, each factual revelation, was a step closer to the justice and resolution she had worked tirelessly to pursue. The court settling into a concentrated silence as the first evidence was laid before the judge, the anticipation tangible, the space around her almost electric with the promise of truth emerging and the possibility of change. Emily's fingers rested lightly on the binder Olivia had set down, her heartbeat aligning with the rhythm of the room, a measured patience tempered with the quiet strength that had brought her to this precise moment. The room grew still as Olivia Carter carefully opened the binder to reveal a series of documents meticulously organized, each page revealing details of financial transfers, emails, and signed statements. Emily Johnson standing beside her, heart steadying with a sense of purpose, her hand resting lightly over her growing belly, as if drawing strength from the small life within. She felt the weight of the months of preparation, research, and persistence finally materializing into something tangible. The judge leaned forward slightly, eyes narrowing with focused attention, the sunlight catching the edge of the polished gavel, casting a sharp line across the table, subtle movements of onlookers signaling curiosity and anticipation. Richard Whitman shifted uneasily in his chair, confidence wavering as Olivia began to narrate the sequence of events with precise, deliberate clarity, explaining connections that had previously been hidden in complex financial statements, discrepancies between claims and evidence, and a series of overlooked communications that painted a picture difficult to refute. Emily followed each word carefully, noticing the faint flicker of surprise in the judge's eyes, the slight inhale from the courtroom reporter, the careful glance exchanged between Richard and his attorney, all silent affirmations that the truth was emerging layer by layer. Olivia paused to slide photographs across the table, each image highlighting timelines, property titles, and correspondences that directly contradicted the narrative Richard had presented, the room absorbing every detail. Emily sensing the subtle shift in the atmosphere, the tension replaced by quiet attention and a growing awareness that the story was no longer controlled by fear but by facts. She adjusted her posture slightly, drawing in a slow, steady breath, feeling the rhythm of her own heartbeat align with the cadence of the presentation. The gavel rested momentarily, emphasizing the significance of each revelation. Then Olivia transitioned to a new set of documents, revealing a previously undisclosed set of DNA results. The judge leaning forward, his expression a mixture of curiosity and the anticipation of unfolding truth. Emily caught the faint tightening of Richard's jaw, the tightening of his fingers around the armrest, subtle signs that the meticulous preparation had begun to unseat the carefully constructed narrative he had relied upon. The quiet murmur of pens scratching notes, the soft clearing of throats, all forming a backdrop to the moment. Emily felt a profound sense of resolve, the culmination of every late night and careful calculation, each piece of evidence reinforcing her position, her eyes scanning the room, noticing the subtle reactions of those present. The anticipation building in the judge's attentive posture, the courtroom audience leaning forward in silent engagement. And Emily understood that this was the critical juncture where the meticulous gathering of truth and the quiet strength she had nurtured over months would converge, the air itself seeming charged with the weight of revelation. And with each passing second, the sense of inevitable clarity and justice grew, the small movements of her baby within her providing a quiet, steadying rhythm that mirrored her own resolve, reminding her that the endurance and persistence she had cultivated were not just for herself, but for the life she carried and the undeniable assertion of her rights in this pivotal moment. The judge paused, lifting the stack of documents with deliberate care, his eyes scanning each page with a sharp focus that made the entire courtroom fall into a hushed silence. Emily Johnson standing tall beside Olivia Carter, the quiet confidence in her posture radiating from months of preparation, each breath steady, measured, grounding her as she absorbed the weight of the moment, the sunlight glinting off the polished wood of the bench, creating a contrast between shadow and light that seemed to mirror the hidden truths about to emerge. Richard Whitman shifting uneasily in his chair, his carefully maintained composure flickering for a brief instant as the first pieces of DNA evidence were read aloud. Olivia narrating with precision, pointing to names, dates, and correlations that connected months of concealed communications to the financial and personal matters under scrutiny. Emily followed every syllable, feeling the gentle flutter of her unborn child as a quiet anchor, reminding her of the stakes, of the reason she had endured the countless hours of uncertainty and preparation. She noticed subtle reactions from the courtroom staff, the slight widening of eyes, the tentative nods, the murmured acknowledgments that even in this formal space, the truth carried weight, and the judge, a seasoned observer of complex cases, allowed a slight pause between statements. As if to give the reality of the revelations space to settle, Emily felt a surge of clarity. The narrative she had carefully constructed alongside Olivia now unfolding in real time, each fact landing with precision, each discrepancy from Richard's previous claims revealed and contextualized in a way that was impossible to ignore. The quiet shuffle of papers, the soft click of pens, and the faint hum of the air conditioning created a rhythm that underscored the meticulous presentation. Emily's fingers lightly touched the edge of the binder as Olivia introduced the conclusive DNA documentation, the room holding its collective breath as the final confirmation emerged, the judge's gaze lifting from the papers, meeting Emily's with a subtle nod that acknowledged both the weight of evidence and the resilience of the woman before him. The soft shift in Richard's posture, a barely perceptible tightening of the jaw and shoulders, reflected a sudden awareness that control had shifted, that the carefully constructed facade of certainty was giving way to the undeniable facts of truth. Emily drew in a slow, steady breath, her pulse aligning with the quiet rhythm of the room, knowing that the forthcoming moments would determine not only her immediate future but the security, dignity, and recognition she had fought tirelessly to achieve. Every detail meticulously presented, every narrative carefully articulated, the courtroom itself seeming to lean in, attentive, as the judge prepared to synthesize the evidence, contemplate the implications, and guide the proceedings toward the revelation that would ultimately define the outcome. And Emily, standing composed, allowed herself the smallest flicker of hope, a quiet acknowledgement that persistence, preparation, and unwavering resolve were converging into the pivotal moment where justice could finally be observed, acknowledged, and affirmed. Emily Johnson felt a subtle shift in the energy of the courtroom as Olivia Carter carefully laid out the final pieces of evidence, each page, chart, and photograph aligning perfectly with the narrative they had built over months, the judge leaning slightly forward, eyes scanning every detail with an intensity that made the room feel suspended in time, the sunlight streaming through the tall windows catching the edges of the documents, casting sharp, clean lines across the polished wooden table. Emily's hand resting lightly over her belly, feeling the gentle stirrings of her baby as a quiet anchor amidst the mounting tension. She took a slow, deliberate breath, focusing on each word Olivia spoke, every explanation precise, methodical, and impossible to dispute, the courtroom settling into an attentive silence. The faint rustle of papers and the soft scraping of shoes against the tile providing a subtle rhythm to the unfolding drama. Richard Whitman's confidence began to falter, his shoulders tightening and his hands gripping the armrests of his chair, small signs of unease betraying his previously unwavering composure. Emily noticed the minute expressions on the faces of the audience, the subtle widening of eyes, the tentative leaning forward, the quiet exchange of glances that indicated the gravity of the revelations. Each piece of DNA information and financial discrepancy laid bare an intricate web that had been hidden for years. And as Olivia narrated the connections, Emily felt a sense of quiet empowerment, the culmination of careful planning and unwavering patience manifesting in a compelling display of truth. The judge's pen tapping softly against the bench as he absorbed the details, his gaze occasionally flicking toward Emily with a measured acknowledgement of her resilience. The room seemed to hold its collective breath, every observer aware that the narrative was now in the hands of fact and reason rather than perception or power. Emily's posture remained composed, a reflection of the inner strength she had cultivated, every small gesture purposeful, every glance deliberate, the gentle hum of the air conditioning mixing with the low murmur of the attendees, forming a subtle soundtrack to the intensity of the moment. As Olivia moved to summarize the evidence, the timeline and the implications became unmistakably clear. The connections between Richard's actions, the hidden assets, and the verification through DNA, forming a cohesive story that no argument could easily dismantle. Emily felt the weight of anticipation and hope mingling together, the quiet confidence growing within her as she realized that the path to justice had been laid out meticulously, each step intentional and precise. The atmosphere almost electric with the expectation of resolution, and as the judge poised himself to address the findings, Emily allowed herself a measured exhale, the flutter of her baby inside providing a subtle reminder of why she had endured every challenge, every late night of preparation, and every moment of uncertainty, knowing that the culmination of these efforts had brought her to this pivotal point where truth and perseverance were poised to converge, and the subtle energy in the courtroom signaled that the coming moments would define not only the outcome of the case but the enduring strength and dignity she carried with her. As Olivia Carter carefully organized the final exhibits on the judge's bench, Emily Johnson took a slow, steadying breath, feeling the subtle movements of her baby within, a quiet reminder of why every careful decision and late-night preparation had mattered. The room settled into a tense quiet, the polished wooden floor reflecting the soft glow of sunlight streaming through the tall windows, casting long shadows that shifted with the movements of the attendees. The judge, poised and attentive, adjusted his glasses and leaned slightly forward, scanning each page with meticulous care, every line of evidence presented with clarity and precision, the rustle of papers and the soft tapping of pens forming a background rhythm that underscored the importance of the moment. Richard Whitman shifted in his chair, the confident facade of previous appearances giving way to subtle signs of unease, the tension in his posture betraying his growing awareness that the carefully constructed narrative he had relied upon was being methodically dismantled. Emily's gaze remained calm, resolute, each small gesture measured, her hand resting lightly on her belly, fingers tracing the gentle curve in a quiet act of reassurance and focus. The courtroom absorbing the unfolding story, the faint murmur of whispers from the audience punctuating the otherwise hushed environment, the interplay of light and shadow on the polished surfaces, the subtle creak of benches, and the soft echo of footsteps in the hallways outside, all contributing to the cinematic atmosphere. Olivia began to summarize the connections, tracing the evidence from financial discrepancies to concealed communications, laying out a timeline that clearly demonstrated the patterns of decision and concealment. The judge's eyes followed each transition, his expression a careful balance of curiosity and impartial scrutiny. Emily noted the minute changes in Richard's demeanor, a slight tightening around the jaw, a subtle shift in the way he gripped the armrests, small, almost imperceptible signs that control was beginning to slip from his grasp. Every element of the case meticulously presented, every fact and correlation articulated with deliberate clarity, reinforcing the narrative Emily had carefully built over months. The audience leaned forward, engaged, as each revelation was connected, the DNA results placed into context alongside financial and personal documentation. The cumulative weight of evidence forming a coherent and undeniable account. Emily drew another steady breath, the rhythm of her pulse aligning with the careful cadence of Olivia's narration, a sense of quiet empowerment growing as she recognized the culmination of preparation and resilience taking tangible form in the courtroom. The judge paused briefly, allowing the gravity of the assembled evidence to settle, a subtle acknowledgement that truth and persistence had converged in this moment. The air in the room seemed charged, expectant, with the anticipation of resolution and the promise that every detail meticulously documented would now speak for itself. Emily's focus remained unwavering, the soft movements of her baby a comforting presence as she mentally reinforced the strength and dignity that had carried her to this pivotal point. The quiet hum of attention from the audience, the precise articulation of each piece of evidence, and the measured attention of the judge created an atmosphere thick with the potential for revelation, and Emily felt the steady, grounding awareness that her careful planning, her perseverance, and her unwavering commitment to truth were all about to culminate in a moment that could redefine the path forward, a testament to the quiet power of resilience and preparation in the face of uncertainty. Emily Johnson felt the courtroom hold its collective breath as Olivia Carter began to synthesize the intricate web of evidence, her voice steady and deliberate, drawing clear connections between the financial discrepancies, the hidden communications, and the verified DNA results, each point landing with undeniable weight. The polished wooden surfaces of the tables reflecting the sunlight in sharp lines that seemed to illuminate the facts for everyone present. Emily adjusted her posture, her hand resting lightly on her belly, feeling the gentle movement of her baby as a quiet rhythm that anchored her determination. The judge leaning forward, eyes scanning every page, expression shifting subtly with each revelation, signaling careful consideration and the gravity of the information presented. Richard Whitman's composure began to show cracks, a subtle tightening around his jaw, a faint shift in the way he held himself. Small gestures that revealed the internal awareness that the narrative he had relied upon was no longer under his control. Emily took a measured breath, centering herself amidst the tension, drawing strength from the meticulous preparation and quiet persistence that had brought her to this precise moment. The soft murmur of papers being handled, the gentle shuffle of shoes, the quiet hum of the air conditioning, all forming a backdrop that underscored the intensity and focus of the unfolding events. And as Olivia moved through the final exhibits, presenting the clear and irrefutable sequence of facts, Emily's mind tracked each element, appreciating the deliberate construction of the narrative that left no room for ambiguity, the subtle interactions in the room reflecting the impact of the evidence, eyes widening, heads tilting slightly, the careful attention to detail mirrored in the judge's focused gaze, the audience leaning forward in quiet anticipation, absorbing the information, the rhythm of the courtroom measured and deliberate, yet charged with the energy of truth emerging. Emily felt a deep sense of resolve, a quiet empowerment as the culmination of months of careful documentation, preparation, and patience converged into a single, coherent story, each revelation carrying weight and significance. The gentle movements of her baby within providing a comforting cadence, a reminder of the stakes and the purpose of her endurance. Every page of evidence, every carefully articulated explanation contributing to the clarity and authority of the presentation. The judge making small notations, eyes attentive, reflecting the careful assessment of each piece of information, and Emily, standing composed, allowed herself the faintest sense of confidence that the painstaking work, the attention to detail, and the unwavering focus were culminating in a moment where the truth would be recognized and acknowledged, the courtroom seeming to pulse with the anticipation of resolution, the quiet strength she had cultivated over months radiating from her presence. Each subtle gesture, each deliberate breath, reinforcing the narrative of integrity, resilience, and persistence, the atmosphere charged with the significance of the unfolding events. And Emily knew that this was the pivotal juncture where meticulous preparation and unwavering determination would converge to shape the outcome, highlighting the enduring power of truth and the quiet force of steadfast resolve in the face of uncertainty. The tension in the courtroom grew almost tangible as Olivia Carter carefully laid out the concluding sequence of evidence, her voice deliberate, precise, and unwavering, each word carrying the weight of months of research and preparation. Emily Johnson standing beside her, steady and poised, her hand resting lightly on her rounded belly, feeling the reassuring stirrings of her baby as a subtle anchor against the mounting anticipation, the polished mahogany surfaces of the tables reflecting the sunlight streaming through the tall windows, creating shifting patterns of light and shadow that seemed to mirror the unfolding revelations. The judge leaning forward, eyes narrowing slightly as he absorbed the meticulously organized documentation. Each page, photograph, and annotation revealing connections that had previously been hidden. The audience silent, leaning forward, attentive. The soft rustle of papers and the occasional low murmur forming a quiet rhythm that underscored the gravity of the moment. Richard Whitman sitting across the room, his composure beginning to waver, subtle shifts in posture, tightening of the jaw, and faint tension in his shoulders betraying his growing awareness that the narrative he had relied upon was no longer unchallenged. Emily's focus remained absolute, the months of preparation crystallizing into a poised confidence. The careful organization of the evidence and Olivia's clear articulation creating a rhythm that the courtroom could not ignore, every document, every timeline, and every correlation reinforcing the inevitable clarity of the story. The judge's pen tapping softly against the bench, a deliberate metronome marking the significance of each revelation. Emily feeling the quiet power of persistence and patience, the gentle movement of her baby within providing a subtle, grounding rhythm, a reminder of the stakes and of the reason she had endured countless hours of uncertainty and careful planning. Olivia moving seamlessly from one exhibit to the next, highlighting critical points, tracing the narrative thread from financial discrepancies to personal communications to the conclusive DNA documentation, each step reinforcing the cohesion and credibility of their presentation, the courtroom absorbing every detail. Subtle shifts in posture and expression reflecting the impact of the evidence. The judge nodding minutely in acknowledgement, and Emily sensing the gradual realignment of attention in the room, a quiet recognition that the truth was unfolding in a structured, undeniable way, the air almost electric with the anticipation of resolution, every element of preparation converging at this pivotal juncture. Emily breathing steadily, grounding herself in the certainty of her careful work, the gentle stir of her baby providing a comforting cadence as the narrative reached its zenith. The atmosphere charged with focus and clarity, a moment suspended in time, where the convergence of truth, persistence, and meticulous preparation was poised to define the outcome, highlighting the quiet, formidable power of determination and resilience in the pursuit of justice. And Emily, composed and unwavering, felt a subtle surge of anticipation that the culmination of her efforts would be recognized. Every detail accounted for, every fact presented with precision, the courtroom itself, attentive, waiting, as the final pieces aligned and the implications of the evidence became undeniable. Emily Johnson felt a subtle shift in the courtroom as Olivia Carter carefully positioned the final evidence before the judge, the polished wooden surfaces catching the streams of sunlight that filtered through the tall windows, casting elongated shadows across the floor, each detail of the documents and photographs meticulously arranged to highlight the sequence of events and the connections that had previously been hidden. Emily's hand rested lightly over her belly, feeling the gentle flutter of her baby as a quiet, grounding rhythm amidst the mounting anticipation, the judge leaning forward, eyes focused and unwavering, absorbing the intricate layers of documentation with a methodical attention that spoke to both experience and the weight of responsibility. Richard Whitman's confidence visibly faltered, a subtle tightening around his jaw and shoulders betraying a growing awareness that the narrative he had relied upon was now being methodically deconstructed, the courtroom itself holding a near-reverent stillness, the faint rustle of papers and the soft tap of pens on polished surfaces, providing a delicate rhythm to the intense focus of those present. Emily's gaze remained composed, each subtle breath measured, reinforcing her quiet confidence. The months of preparation, patience, and deliberate planning culminating in a poised presentation that left little room for dispute. Olivia's voice carried steadily across the room, outlining connections between financial records, communications, and the conclusive DNA evidence, each point emphasized with clarity and precision. The audience leaning forward slightly, subtle expressions of surprise and recognition crossing faces as the coherence and depth of the evidence became undeniable. Emily noted the judge's slight nods and the faint widening of his eyes, a silent acknowledgement of the thoroughness and impact of the presentation, each photograph and document reinforcing the careful structure of the narrative. The soft hum of the air conditioning blending with the quiet murmur of the room, forming an almost tangible undercurrent of tension and anticipation. Emily felt a growing sense of empowerment, the culmination of months of diligence and persistence manifesting in the alignment of facts and careful articulation. Her heartbeat steady, matching the measured cadence of Olivia's narration, the evidence converging in a way that could not be ignored or dismissed. The subtle reactions of Richard and his attorney underscoring the shifting balance within the room, Emily's fingers lightly brushing the edge of the binder, a small gesture of composure, the movements of her baby within providing both reassurance and focus. As Olivia transitioned seamlessly through the final points, the timeline and implications of each piece became increasingly clear, the judge's attentive posture and thoughtful expressions indicating the unfolding clarity of truth. And Emily, standing composed yet aware of the weight of each moment, felt the quiet but growing certainty that the meticulously presented evidence, her enduring patience and unwavering determination were converging toward a pivotal moment that would define the direction of the proceedings, highlighting the enduring power of preparation, resilience, and the subtle force of integrity in a setting where precision and truth could ultimately prevail. Emily Johnson felt the atmosphere in the courtroom shift subtly as Olivia Carter presented the final piece of evidence, a neatly compiled series of documents and photographs that tied together months of concealed communications and financial details, each page carefully annotated to demonstrate timelines and connections with precision. Emily's hand rested lightly on her belly, feeling the soft movements of her baby as a grounding presence amidst the intensity of the room, the sunlight streaming through the tall windows, catching the edges of the papers and casting sharp lines across the polished wooden surfaces. The judge leaning forward slightly, eyes focused and attentive, absorbing every detail with measured consideration. Richard Whitman shifting uneasily in his chair, the confident facade he had maintained now showing signs of strain, a subtle tightening around his jaw and shoulders, small gestures indicating an internal recognition that control was slipping from his grasp. The courtroom itself seemed to pause, the soft rustle of papers, the faint tapping of pens, and the low hum of the air conditioning creating a rhythm that underscored the gravity of the moment. Emily drawing a slow, steady breath, aligning her pulse with the deliberate cadence of Olivia's narration, each word emphasizing connections between previously hidden evidence, DNA results, and the implications for both personal and financial matters. The audience leaning in, their expressions subtly shifting with each revelation, nods of acknowledgement and quiet widening of eyes reflecting the impact of the organized presentation. Emily felt a surge of quiet confidence, the months of preparation and careful documentation converging into a coherent, undeniable narrative. The judge adjusting his glasses, pen poised, absorbing the information with a thoughtful expression, the room charged with anticipation. The subtle interplay of light and shadow emphasizing the clarity and precision of the evidence, Emily's composure unwavering, her focus on the unfolding story and the subtle reassurance from the gentle stir of her baby, every gesture and breath measured, reinforcing the strength and determination that had carried her to this pivotal moment. Olivia moving seamlessly through the final exhibits, highlighting critical points, tracing patterns, timelines, and connections that brought clarity to the complexity of the situation, each fact and correlation landing with impact. The subtle reactions of Richard and his attorney indicating the shifting balance within the room, Emily feeling a quiet empowerment, the culmination of patience, meticulous planning, and resilience manifesting in the alignment of evidence and narrative, the judge nodding minutely, a silent acknowledgement of the clarity and thoroughness, the courtroom attentive, the audience absorbed, the rhythm of the room forming a backdrop to the sense of impending resolution, Emily breathing steadily, drawing quiet strength from the consistency of her preparation and the presence of her baby, a subtle, calming cadence amidst the charged atmosphere, the convergence of facts, determination, and truth reaching its peak, the energy in the room almost tangible as the implications became clear, and Emily understood that the careful articulation of evidence and the unwavering presentation of truth had brought her to the threshold of a moment that could define the outcome, reinforcing the quiet but formidable power of preparation, perseverance, and integrity in achieving resolution. The courtroom seemed to exhale as Olivia Carter concluded the detailed presentation, her voice calm but deliberate, guiding each observer through the culmination of evidence that revealed patterns of concealed actions, financial discrepancies, and the verified DNA documentation. Emily Johnson standing with a poised composure, hand gently resting on her belly, feeling the quiet, rhythmic stir of her baby as a subtle reassurance amidst the intense focus of the room, the polished wooden tables, reflecting the sunlight that streamed through the tall windows, casting elongated shadows that moved slowly across the floor as if marking the passage of a critical moment. The judge leaning slightly forward, eyes fixed on the documents, absorbing the implications with careful consideration, his pen poised, ready to record the observations and decisions that would follow. Richard Whitman's composure visibly wavered, the tension in his shoulders and the subtle shift in his posture betraying his growing realization that the carefully controlled narrative he had maintained was now being systematically dismantled. Emily felt a quiet surge of confidence. The months of meticulous preparation, research, and patient accumulation of evidence converging into a coherent story that could not be refuted, the audience sitting in silent attentiveness, heads tilted slightly forward, eyes following the sequence of events as Olivia traced the connections with precision and clarity, the soft rustle of papers, the low hum of air conditioning, and the subtle clicking of pens forming a background rhythm that underscored the gravity of the moment. Emily's mind focused on the unfolding revelations, each element meticulously presented and articulated, every detail reinforcing the strength of the case. The judge, nodding minutely, his attention unwavering as the full context of the evidence came into view, subtle reactions from those present, quiet widening of eyes, and small gestures of recognition indicating the impact of the narrative, Emily's posture steady, breath measured, composure unwavering, the gentle movements of her baby providing a rhythmic grounding that allowed her to maintain calm focus. Olivia moving seamlessly through the final points, highlighting the significance of each document, photograph, and annotation. Emily feeling the culmination of her efforts manifesting in a moment where clarity, truth, and persistence converged, the courtroom charged with an anticipatory energy that reflected the significance of the unfolding revelations, every word, every visual cue contributing to the undeniable coherence of the presentation, the judge reflecting carefully on the implications. Emily aware of the subtle balance of attention shifting toward her narrative, the quiet acknowledgement that months of patience, preparation, and unwavering focus had created a path for justice. Each small gesture, each deliberate movement reinforcing the authority and integrity of her presence, the soft movements of her baby within providing reassurance and continuity, a gentle reminder of the stakes and the purpose of her endurance. And as Olivia closed the binder with a precise movement, the room collectively held its breath, the subtle tension, anticipation, and sense of finality combining into a suspended moment where the weight of truth, careful preparation, and steadfast resolve were about to define the next step in the unfolding proceedings, highlighting the enduring strength and quiet power of persistence and meticulous attention to detail in achieving recognition and resolution. The judge's gaze shifted slowly from the documents before him to Emily Johnson, who stood with a quiet, resolute composure, hand lightly resting on her belly, feeling the gentle stir of her baby as a grounding presence amidst the intensity of the moment. The sunlight streaming through the tall windows, casting warm patterns across the polished wooden surfaces and highlighting the careful arrangement of evidence Olivia Carter had presented, each photograph, financial record, and correspondence, meticulously annotated to demonstrate timelines and connections that had been hidden. The room held a delicate tension, the soft rustle of papers, the quiet tap of pens, and the subtle hum of air conditioning creating a rhythm that underscored the gravity of the unfolding proceedings. Emily's gaze remained focused, absorbing every detail, noting the slight reactions of the audience, the subtle widening of eyes, the tentative leaning forward in seats, reflecting the recognition of clarity and precision in the evidence. Richard Whitman shifted in his chair, the faint tension in his shoulders and the tightening of his jaw betraying the internal acknowledgement that the carefully constructed narrative he had relied upon was unraveling. Emily drew a steady, deliberate breath, aligning her focus with the rhythm of the presentation. Every word and detail presented by Olivia reinforcing the coherence and strength of her position, the judge leaning forward slightly, eyes attentive, absorbing the sequence of revelations with careful deliberation, a quiet acknowledgement of the depth and significance of the case. The courtroom almost suspended in time, every observer attuned to the meticulous connections between financial documents, communications, and the verified DNA evidence that formed an undeniable narrative. Emily's mind centered on the culmination of months of careful planning, patience, and persistent effort, the gentle stir of her baby within providing reassurance and a subtle cadence to her resolve. Each subtle gesture, each measured breath reinforcing her composure. Olivia moving seamlessly through the final exhibits, highlighting critical points, drawing clear lines between the concealed actions and the consequences now fully revealed. The audience leaning slightly forward, attentive. The quiet acknowledgement of the weight and clarity of the evidence forming a palpable sense of anticipation, Emily feeling a profound sense of quiet empowerment. The culmination of preparation and perseverance manifesting in a coherent and undeniable presentation. The subtle shifts in Richard's posture reflecting the realization that control had shifted, the room charged with an anticipatory energy as the implications of the evidence settled. Every element contributing to a precise and structured understanding of the situation. Emily's focus unwavering, the movements of her baby a comforting and steady presence, the meticulous articulation of facts and timelines creating an unassailable narrative. The judge's slight nods and careful expressions signaling the recognition of truth, every breath, every detail, every measured movement converging toward a pivotal moment where patience, preparation, and unwavering determination would shape the outcome and affirm the quiet power of resilience, integrity, and persistence in the pursuit of justice. And Emily, standing composed and centered, felt the subtle but profound realization that the meticulous efforts of the past months had brought her to a moment where the alignment of facts, clarity of evidence, and steadfast determination could finally manifest in the acknowledgement of truth within the courtroom. The judge finally leaned back slightly, his gaze sweeping across the courtroom as if to take in the entirety of the narrative that had unfolded. Emily Johnson standing with a quiet strength, hand gently resting on her belly, feeling the soft, steady movements of her baby as a reassuring rhythm. The sunlight streaming through the tall windows casting warm highlights on the polished wooden surfaces and the carefully organized evidence displayed before the bench. Olivia Carter standing beside her, maintaining a poised and deliberate presence, each gesture emphasizing the clarity and precision of the presentation. The audience holding a silent anticipation, leaning forward slightly in their seats, the faint rustle of papers and soft tapping of pens providing a subtle background cadence that accentuated the weight of the moment. Richard Whitman shifting uneasily in his chair, the subtle tension in his posture, the slight tightening around his jaw, and the fleeting narrowing of his eyes all signaling a realization that control had passed from his grasp to the meticulous structure of truth presented in the room. Emily felt a sense of quiet empowerment, the culmination of months of preparation, careful research, and unwavering patience now manifesting in the undeniable clarity of the evidence. Every document, photograph, and annotation meticulously aligned to demonstrate connections and timelines that had previously been concealed, Olivia moving seamlessly through the final points. Her voice measured and deliberate, highlighting key elements that tied the narrative together, each revelation landing with undeniable impact. The judge adjusting his glasses, pen poised, absorbing the sequence of events with careful attention, subtle nods and minute gestures reflecting the recognition of the coherence and significance of the case. The room charged with a focused anticipation, the soft hum of air conditioning blending with the quiet attentiveness of the audience. Emily, centering herself, her composure unwavering, the gentle stir of her baby providing both reassurance and a grounding cadence as the final pieces of the story aligned. The courtroom responding almost imperceptibly to the structured clarity and precision, the weight of truth settling into place as Olivia concluded her meticulous presentation, every subtle reaction in the room, slight shifts in posture, widening of eyes, careful exchanges of glances, underscoring the impact and resonance of the evidence. Emily feeling a profound sense of quiet victory, not in overt celebration but in the knowledge that persistence, preparation, and steadfast attention to detail had guided her to this pivotal moment. The energy in the room still, concentrated, each observer absorbing the culmination of effort, patience, and resilience. And as the judge's pen hovered, contemplating the implications, Emily allowed herself the smallest, measured exhale, a subtle acknowledgement that the careful alignment of facts, the clarity of presentation, and the unshakable resolve she had maintained over months had created a moment where truth, integrity, and quiet strength converged, leaving the room poised on the brink of resolution, the subtle movements of her baby within her reinforcing the enduring significance of each carefully calculated step that had led to this defining moment of acknowledgement and potential justice.